You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. I've got to start by recapping Hawks Sixers. And believe it or not, I actually know a little bit about sports. What did I tell you the Sixers would have to do if they wanted to win this game? Put Ben Simmons on Trae Young. What did you see yesterday? Ben Simmons not locking down Trae Young because Young still got his. He did have a double-double, but let's be honest. Seeing what Trae Young did against the Knicks and in Game 1 of this series, that performance yesterday was a major disappointment. Young shot just 6 for 16 from the field, 1 for 7 from beyond the arc. He did a great job of getting to the free throw line. That's what Young is going to have to do. If you see a guy like Simmons on you, you're not going to be able to break him down like you did Danny Green or Derrick Rose or insert New York Knick here. You are going to need to draw contact. I mean, I was really impressed with Ben Simmons yesterday. You know you're good when you're not filling the box score, but people watching the game are taking notice of you. That was what Simmons did yesterday. He only had 4 points. He had 7 assists. He had 3 rebounds. It was not a good box score performance. But he did an excellent job on Trae Young. Like I said, believe it or not, I actually know a little bit about sports. Give the Sixers a ton of credit for winning this game. Joel Embiid went off. Absolutely dominated Clint Capella and John Collins. I mean, Embiid dropped 40, and he had 13 boards. It was an excellent performance. Tobias Harris was really good. Seth Curry was draining threes. Off the bench, Shake Milton, a guy who was an afterthought in the last few playoff games, stepped up and hit 4 threes. He finished with 14 points. This was an excellent, well-rounded win for the Sixers. Dwight Howard was good too. People are going to get on the Sixers bench for being bad. And yeah, with the exception of Milton and Howard, the bench did not impress me. Matisse Thybulle was not that good. George Hill wasn't that good. Furkan Korkmaz was dreadful. Tyrese Maxey was dreadful. I get that, but when you have Joel Embiid dropping 40 points, Tobias Harris and Seth Curry each scoring over 20 points, and Ben Simmons slowing down Trae Young better than anyone has all playoffs, you're doing something right. Look, without Trae Young, the Hawks just don't have the firepower to win a game. Okay, it's just that simple. Danilo Gallinari can go off. Kevin Huerter can go off. There's no question that the Hawks bench was better than the Sixers bench yesterday. But when you have Embiid destroying Capella and Collins, when you have Simmons not destroying Trae Young, but certainly limiting him, and you have Bogdan Bogdanovic only hitting 2 threes in 41 minutes, that's not going to end well for you. The Sixers showed yesterday why they're the better team than the Hawks. They got out to a big lead early in this game. Yes, the Hawks came back, and they did have the lead at one point in time in the third quarter, but then the Sixers put their foot on the throat of the Hawks. They just dominated in the fourth quarter. That's how you close out a game. The Sixers really schooled the Hawks here. They had trouble closing out game one. The Sixers showed them how to do it. Doc Rivers really schooled Nate McMillan. I'm going to put Ben Simmons, my best defender, on your best player. And I'm going to have my MVP finalist center dominate your front court. And I'm going to have my other guys step up. Tobias Harris, who's had a really good playoffs. He stepped up. Seth Curry couldn't miss. Shake Milton couldn't miss. Very, very impressive win by the Sixers. Moving on now to Clippers Jazz. One of the best games of these playoffs so far. Back and forth affair. The Clippers have a big lead at one point. The Jazz come storming back. They have a 10-point lead. The Clippers come storming back. Really, really fun game. Now, there are a lot of things to break down here, but the first one is the performance of Donovan Mitchell. You don't need me to tell you that he was fantastic. All you have to do is look at the box score. He had 45 points. He put the Jazz on his back when they were down big and hit big shot after big shot after big shot. Mitchell yesterday actually tied Karl Malone's record for most 40-point games by a member of the Utah Jazz in the playoffs. To put that in perspective, Donovan Mitchell has been a member of the Jazz for 4 years. Karl Malone was a member of the Jazz for 18 seasons. Here's the question that should be asked. And I don't know if this was discussed on First Take or Undisputed or any other sports show, but I'm going to discuss it here because it's the conversation we need to have. Is Donovan Mitchell a superstar? We know that he's a star. The diehard NBA fans know that he's a star. Okay, they put him in the same tier as a guy like Jason Tatum or De'Aaron Fox or Brandon Ingram. But should we put Mitchell above that tier? Should we put him in the Damian Lillard tier? Should we put him in the Bradley Beal tier? I'm not saying you put him in the elite tier. I don't think he's in the Steph Curry range, the Giannis range, the Luka range, the Durant range, the LeBron range, the Kawhi range. I don't think he's there, but I feel like we need to have this discussion. When you think of the best players in the NBA and you get past the super duper stars, should you mention Donovan Mitchell? I think the answer is yes. I mean, the best comparison for Donovan Mitchell is Devin Booker. A young, electric guard, and is the best player on a team that's starting to make some noise in the playoffs. Do we think of Devin Booker as a superstar? I feel like most people do. Some people don't. I mean, it's tough, right? Because Booker plays for the Suns. And the Suns aren't an exciting team. This current version of the Suns is. There's no question. But the Suns don't have that reputation around the country. They're not like the Lakers or the Celtics or the Bulls. I mean, unless you're a diehard NBA fan, no one is staying up late to catch a Suns regular season game on League Pass. Same thing with the Jazz. LeBron said something very similar to that. Growing up, we never played as the Jazz in video games. Yeah, he's right. It's unfair that affects these guys' reputations. Because at the end of the day, Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker would be the same players in New York and LA as they are in Utah and Phoenix. I mean, look, I've spoken highly of the Jazz in the past. I like the Jazz. I think they're a really good team. They were the best team in the NBA all season. Granted, I picked the Clippers, but in the regular season, I was saying that we need to look at the Jazz as a legitimate threat to make a big run in the playoffs. Who did you hear most people pick to come out of the West? The Clippers and Lakers, right? At least that's what I heard. Maybe the Nuggets. I heard some Nuggets, but I didn't hear a lot of Jazz. I really didn't hear any Suns. It's a shame. Talent should supersede market size. You know, it's okay if the casual NBA fan falls victim to that, but the diehard fans, they shouldn't. They should be better than that. Look, I'm not trying to begrudge anyone for saying that Donovan Mitchell isn't a superstar. If your point is that he needs to win first and he needs to get to at least the conference finals or the NBA finals or win something before you give him that title, I get that argument. I disagree with it, but I understand it. I mean, that's like saying that Luka Doncic isn't a superstar. That's like saying that Giannis isn't a superstar. Of course they are. We've got to put some respect on Donovan Mitchell's name. That's all I'm saying. And it's kind of funny, going back to market size, my father and I were watching Clippers Jazz, and we got to talking about player empowerment. My father said that the thing that he doesn't like the most about the NBA, and he's not a big basketball fan, is that the players control what teams do. Like, they pick what teams they want to play for. Like, case in point, James Harden. As much as I love James Harden, as much as I love the fact that he's a net, I understand why my father doesn't like the fact that he forced his way out of Houston even though he signed a contract. I mean, his point is, and he's correct, that this doesn't happen in any other sport. You don't see players forming super teams in Major League Baseball. What's the closest thing we have to that? The Dodgers and Padres. Neither one of those teams are in first place in the NL West. Hockey, it doesn't happen. Football, it doesn't happen. What's the closest example we have in football? Tom Brady going to the Buccaneers, picking a random team and winning them a Super Bowl. Would you call the Buccaneers a super team? I mean, they're a great team, don't get me wrong. They obviously won the Super Bowl, but I don't really classify them as a super team. Look, there's no question that the NBA has a super team issue. You have these superstars forsaking their teams to go to bigger markets. LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Kevin Durant, when he left the Thunder for the Warriors. That's an issue. But there is a caveat to that. Do you think the NBA is happy with this Elite Eight? The marquee teams are out. The Lakers are out. The Celtics are out. If you wanted to call the Knicks a marquee team, I'd give it to you. The NBA does better when the Knicks are good. There's no question. You have the second LA team in the second round. You have the second New York team in the second round. How's that gonna affect ratings? Seriously, I'm asking. I have no idea what the ratings are. Do I really care? Not really. I'm a fan. I love parody. I love this parody. Evan Roberts made this point, and I didn't realize this. Out of this Elite Eight, the team to most recently make an NBA Finals is a version of this team that doesn't exist anymore. The New Jersey Nets in 2003. None of these teams have been to an NBA Finals in over 15 years. That's a great thing for parity. It's a great thing for the diehard NBA fan that's sick and tired of seeing the same teams vying for the title every year. It's nothing against Steph Curry. It's nothing against LeBron James. But it's nice to get some new blood. And yes, I said that the Nets are the second New York team. New York is a Knicks town. Would that be the case if the Knicks were bad and this current version of the Nets was still a thing? Probably not. But you know what? The Knicks were a good team. They made the playoffs. New York is a Knicks town. Maybe as we get deeper into the playoffs, New York will turn into a Nets town for a little bit, but then it'll quickly revert to a Knicks town. There needs to be a perfect storm for New York to become a Nets town. We were close to that. We just needed the Knicks to be bad. That didn't happen. And let me just say this, okay, as a Knicks fan. Knicks fans always throw this out to me. Hey, New York is a Knicks town. The Nets are the second team. Okay. Super. Congratulations. Look at the standings. Nets were the second best team in the East. The Nets are in the playoffs right now. The Nets' third best player is better than your best player. The Nets swept the Knicks this year. That's all that matters. Play on the court. I'll tell you what. If the New York Knicks want to run New York and have that always be the case, that's fine. I'll be content with winning a bunch of games and being title favorites. I'll make that trade. Look, the parity is a good thing for the fans. Is this current version of the second round the ideal scenario for the NBA? Probably not. I think they like having a villain. The Nets are that villain. I think as we get deeper into the playoffs, you're going to see a lot of people rooting against the Nets. And maybe against the Clippers too. And look, I'll say this. As a fan of the Nets, it is great to have my team as the villain. That is fun. I mean, I've been a fan of the villain before. I'm a Yankees fan. The Yankees are always the villain. The Nets have never been the villain before. It's new. It's fun. I like it. I mean, what it's also doing is it's creating new Nets fans. And when people ask them, when did you become a Nets fan? Some people will say 2019 or last year or this year. Yeah, you're allowed to get upset at those people. But look, I've been a fan of this team since 2002. Okay? I have stuck with this team through thick and thin. I remember the back-to-back NBA Finals appearances. I remember the Vince Carter trade. I remember the Deron Williams trade. But I also remember the bad times. 12 and 70. The Pearson-Garnett trade. Having to buy out Deron Williams. The Gerald Wallace trade. You know, usually when I go that far in depth, people say, okay, you're a true Nets fan. You deserve it. I mean, I'll say this. Usually I have a problem with bandwagon fans. Every fan base has them. I really don't like them. It's okay if you're a casual fan of the team. You don't watch every game. Maybe you watch like once or twice a week. But if you're not following the team until they're good, that I don't like. But for the Nets, I don't mind it because they have a small fan base. Nets fans, whenever they meet each other, and I'm talking real Nets fans, there is an instant bond there. My best friend Mark is a Nets fan. I had a coworker, his name was Dan. He's a Nets fan. We instantly clicked. I don't mind it for the Nets. I've learned to accept it for the Yankees. I hate it for the Islanders. And there are no bandwagon Jets fans currently because the Jets haven't been good since 2015. But again, for the Nets, it's okay. And some people like rooting for the villain. Some people like being that troll. Everyone's going to root against this team, so I'm going to root for them. You know how everyone hates the number 13 because they think it's an unlucky number? My grandfather's favorite number was 13. His thinking was, if everyone's discarding it, I'm going to take it. I'll reap the benefits of it. Some people are like that. But there is another element to what my father and I were talking about. And I know I've gone down this rabbit hole quite a lot, but hey, I'm already here, so I might as well finish it. Super teams. I don't think anyone can begrudge free agents for choosing to team up in a certain city. At the end of the day, that's their right as a free agent. They have the right to pick their team, their home market, their destination, their employer. Are there limits to that? Yes. LeBron James leaving Cleveland the way he did with the decision, I'm going to take my talents to South Beach. Yeah, there are better ways to do that. And certainly Kevin Durant leaving the Thunder to go to a Warriors team that went 73-9 and was one win away from another NBA title. Yeah, that's not good. But let me ask you this. Did anyone begrudge Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving for signing with the Nets? Maybe you were upset as a Knicks fan because they didn't choose your team. You were upset that Durant didn't re-sign with the Warriors or Kyrie didn't re-sign with the Celtics. But I don't think anyone begrudged the way that Durant and Kyrie chose Brooklyn. Just like no one begrudged Kawhi Leonard for choosing the Clippers. Although I will say with the Kawhi thing, there's another element there. Paul George forcing his way out of Oklahoma City. In essence, what Kawhi Leonard did was tamper with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Like, just to be clear, Kawhi Leonard talked to a member of the Oklahoma City Thunder and convinced him to request a trade to the Clippers so that they could play together. If Doc Rivers had done that, if Lawrence Frank had done that, if Steve Ballmer had done that, there would have been hell to pay. But because it's player to player, that's okay? Yeah, you're allowed to not like that. You're allowed to not like Anthony Davis forcing his way from the Pelicans to the Lakers. And you're allowed not to like James Harden forcing his way out of Houston to go to the Nets. I mean, I think my father was happy for me because I was so happy with it. If you'll remember, I went to his office that day and celebrated with him. But we've heard this mentioned about the Nets before, that James Harden is a cheat code. He is. On January 5th, there were no big threes in the NBA. The NBA was really even. There were big twos, no big threes. The Nets formed a big three. You're allowed not to like that. You're allowed to want to see different teams win the title every year. I mean, think about it. This NBA Finals coming up, and God only knows what two teams are going to be in it, but this NBA Finals is guaranteed to be the first NBA Finals since the 2010 NBA Finals that doesn't have LeBron James or Steph Curry in it. You do get sick and tired of seeing the same teams. You do get sick and tired of seeing the same players. Look, I don't want to take it for granted, but I think it's a safe bet to say that the Brooklyn Nets are going to be in the next two NBA Finals. And they may win both of them. If you're not a Nets fan, you're probably not gonna like that. And that's okay. I mean, look, we're hearing rumblings, nothing serious, but rumblings, that Damian Lillard could force his way out of Portland. And there's been speculation that he could join the Knicks with Kawhi Leonard. But let's take the Knicks out of it. Should Damian Lillard be allowed to force his way off of the Trailblazers? Forget how you may feel about Damian Lillard. You may want him to win an NBA title. That's fine. I get that. I like Damian Lillard. But should he have the right to demand a trade? You've got to realize something. This guy signed an absolutely mammoth Supermax contract with the Trailblazers. Now, 2 years later, he wants out? That's my father's point. You sign a contract, you should honor it. Now, I understand the argument against it. The Trailblazers have failed to put a good team around Damian Lillard. This guy wants to win, as does everyone. If it's clear that he's never going to win in Portland, if it's clear that James Harden's never going to win in Houston, if it's clear that Anthony Davis is never going to win in New Orleans, what's wrong with taking matters into your own hands? I gotta be honest with you. I see it both ways. I understand my father's point. If you sign a contract, you should honor it. But I also understand the player's point of, I want to win, I've been loyal to this team, I haven't gotten anywhere close. To quote the great Marissa Tomei from My Cousin Vinny, my biological clock is ticking. I mean, look. Let's take Mitchell and Booker as an example, just to bring it full circle. The Jazz and Suns are fun teams. They're fun teams to watch. They're easy teams to root for. But only one team can win. If Donovan Mitchell loses or Devin Booker loses, how would you feel about one of them requesting a trade? I mean, Devin Booker has a right to request a trade, right? If you're saying that it was okay for Anthony Davis to request a trade, or it was okay for James Harden to request a trade, or it'd be okay for Damian Lillard to request a trade, it should be okay for Devin Booker to request a trade, right? Booker spent 6 seasons with the Suns, has only made the playoffs once. God only knows how far he's going to get this year. Is it that dissimilar to what happened with Anthony Davis? Because Davis spent 7 seasons in New Orleans. Only made the playoffs twice. There's not that much of a difference. How would you feel about Devin Booker requesting a trade to a bigger market? You wouldn't like it, right? You'd say, no, you're building something special in Phoenix. You signed a contract, you have to honor it. I don't think it would go over that well. Look, I understand players taking control of their own destiny. But there is a limit. I mean, if I'm looking at it impartially, what James Harden did to get out of Houston, not great. Yeah, if James Harden went to the Sixers, I'd probably be his biggest detractor. But since he's a Net, I love him. Welcome to the world of sports. If my team does it, it's okay. If your team does it, it's wrong. Sports, where hypocrisy and irrationality reign supreme. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Clippers Jazz. I didn't expect to go that far down the rabbit hole. Wow. They're doing that a lot recently. I hope it was interesting to you. It was certainly interesting to me. The second thing that needs to be discussed when it comes to this game is Paul George laying an egg. Shooting 4 for 17 from the field. Yes, Paul George had 20 points. Yes, he had a double-double. It's kind of funny. He's had at least 20 points in all 8 Clippers playoff games this year. But he's shooting just 43.4% from the field and 31.6% from beyond the arc. The field goal percentage is fine. You can live with that. But the 31.6 three-point percentage? Yeah, that's not going to work. I mean, I don't know what it is with Paul George in the playoffs, man. Remember when he used to be playoff Paul George? Remember when we used to regard him as, like, an insanely clutch player? With the Clippers, he's been anything but. He's been one of the worst playoff performers in recent memory. I mean, last year was excusable. It was the bubble. It was a hard environment. George was open about the stress that it placed on his mental health. I understood that. I gave him credit for being so open with it. That was justifiable. This year, George needs to step it up. Okay, if Paul George hits 2 more threes, or even 2 more twos, the Clippers win. I mean, you can't have your second best player be just 4 for 17 from the field. George needs to get this straightened out quickly. If he doesn't, it's going to be a short series. I picked the Clippers in this series, but if George keeps shooting like this, I thought he would turn it around. The Jazz are going to the Western Conference Finals. The last thing to talk about is the decision by Ty Lue to not call a timeout with 15 seconds left in the game. He trusted his players to run something themselves instead of drawing something up. Needless to say, it really didn't work. Kawhi Leonard was smothered by Joe Ingles. He got it to Marcus Morris in the corner. Rudy Gobert was on him. I think it's a safe bet to say that was the last thing on earth Ty Lue wanted to see. The waning seconds of the game, Marcus Morris has the ball, and he's defended by Rudy Gobert. I think it's a safe bet to say that if Lue had drawn something up, it wouldn't have been a 3rd, 4th, or 5th banana shooting over one of the best defensive players in the NBA. I mean, Lue got a lot of heat for not calling a timeout, and watching it live, I was very surprised that Lue didn't call a timeout. But I understand the logic behind not calling a timeout. The Jazz are an excellent defensive team. They're one of the best defensive teams in the nation. Instead of letting them get set, there's logic to trying to catch them in transition. Maybe they make a mistake. They don't have anything planned. I get the logic. It's one of those things that if it works, we're not talking about this right now, but since it didn't work, we're talking about it. I mean, I'll say this. If Ty Lue had called a timeout and the Clippers missed the three, assuming it was a good play design, it got Kawhi Leonard, because that's probably who the ball would have gone to, a good look, we're not talking about it. If the play is designed for Paul George, or it gets Leonard a bad look, yeah, we're questioning it. But if it gets Kawhi Leonard a good look, it just rims out, we're not talking about it. I honestly didn't have a problem with the Clippers not calling a timeout there. The reality is the Jazz just executed their defense perfectly. They defended the two-man game with George and Kawhi perfectly. Rudy Gobert did an excellent job of closing out on Marcus Morris. The fact that he was able to block that three is nothing short of incredible. Do you have any idea how hard it is to block a three-point shot? How many times do we see NBA players either miss entirely or get called for a foul? Gobert executed it perfectly. Now, granted, there was a little bit of an opening for Marcus Morris if he could have executed a little better. He did get Gobert to bite on the pump fake. And Morris's slide to the right could have been executed a little faster. But Gobert played it perfectly. Joe Ingles played Kawhi Leonard perfectly. That was just a great defensive possession by the Jazz. Ty Lue took a reasonable chance that the Jazz wouldn't be as good in transition as they would be in a half-court set. That's reasonable logic. Again, it's one of those things where if it works, fantastic, well done. If it doesn't, we second guess it. But now it's time to preview tonight's game between the Nuggets and the Suns. If the Nuggets are going to win this game, they've got to get to the free throw line more. Throughout the whole game, the Nuggets attempted just 6 free throws. That's not even drawing one shooting foul per quarter. That is terrible. And the Nuggets were a good free throw shooting team this year. They hit 80.3% of their free throws. That's the 7th best mark in the league. Drive to the hoop. Draw contact. Get a guy like DeAndre Ayton into foul trouble. It's actually pretty easy to do. As for the Suns, I'd like their bench to step up. This was my concern with the Suns against the Lakers. And granted, it was unfounded because Anthony Davis was hurt, but the Suns don't have a good bench. It didn't come back to bite them in Game 1 of this series because Paul, Booker, Bridges, Crowder, and Ayton were fantastic. They all scored at least 14 points. 4 of them scored 20 points. But I don't see that happening again. Cameron Payne played really well against the Lakers. He's got to step up here. Torrey Craig was solid on Monday. I'll give him a little bit of credit, but I'd like him to step his game up a little bit more. Maybe get like a dozen points. Let's say that. Cam Johnson really needs to step up. Dario Saric really needs to step up. I just want to see more bench scoring from the Suns. I could see either team winning this game. I don't think the Nuggets are going to go down 2-0 headed back to Denver. If they do, my pick doesn't look that good, so I'll go with the Nuggets. But I'll say this, it wouldn't surprise me at all if the Suns won, because they are playing great basketball right now. Moving on now to the Pacers firing Nate Bjorkgren. This has been rumored for a while, and now it's official. And look, I can't get too upset with it. It was pretty clear that Bjorkgren had lost the locker room, and once that happened, there's really no other way to go. I mean, I'll say this. After the Pacers beat the Hornets in the play-in game, and they beat them rather convincingly, I thought, you know what, rumors of that are overblown. The Pacers will be fine. They have a talented roster. It was just injuries that held them back. Malcolm Brogdon's back. So the Pacers will be okay. Then they get creamed by the Wizards in the second play-in game. And yeah, the writing was on the wall for a while. I'm kind of surprised it took so long. It took like 2.5 weeks. Why wait? Did you want to wait to see who'd become available? Okay, I could see that. But if you know that you're going to move on from Bjorkgren, rip the Band-Aid off as early as possible. I mean, there are a couple guys who would make sense for the Pacers. Again, a team with a very talented roster. A roster that is capable of winning a playoff series or two. Brogdon, T.J. Warren, Karis LeVert, Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner, Dougie McBuckets, etc., etc. They're a good team. They need an experienced and established coach. They tried the unproven guy. It failed miserably. There are 2 or 3 guys that they could go after. The first one is Terry Stotts. He'd make perfect sense. We know he can coach. We know he can win in the playoffs. Granted, he's never won a game in the conference finals, but still, he's gotten there. The Pacers haven't been in the conference finals since 2014. Stotts would make a ton of sense. Mike Budenholzer would make sense. If the Nets win this series, well, let me rephrase. When the Nets win this series, I fully expect Budenholzer to be fired. Budenholzer has established himself as a good coach. He just can't get you over the hump in the playoffs. You can make the second round, you're just not getting past that. So Budenholzer would make some sense. They could also go with an old friend in Rick Carlisle. There have been rumors that Carlisle could be fired. I think that would be a terrible decision for the Mavericks. I like Rick Carlisle. I think he's one of the best coaches in the NBA. It would be interesting to see Carlisle go back to the Pacers. He was the head coach there for 4 seasons. He was the head coach of the Pacers for the Malice at the Palace. Maybe Mike D'Antoni could work. Maybe Jacques Vaughn could work. You need an experienced and established coach. No no-name assistants. But I will say this. I do think Bjorkgren will land a job as a lead assistant somewhere. He'll rehab his stock and he will get another chance. Because he wasn't awful with the Pacers. they did win a play-in game. They did get there after suffering a bunch of injuries. That is impressive. We haven't heard the last of Nate Bjorkgren, I promise you. Alright, now I'll give you some NHL Valk talk. And I'll start with Lightning Hurricanes. Just a terrible effort by the Hurricanes offensively. The Hurricanes offense looked absolutely lifeless in this game. There weren't too many golden opportunities for the Hurricanes. I mean, Andrei Vasilevsky pitched a 29-save shutout. Give him credit. That's hard to do, but Vasilevsky didn't stand on his head a million times. I mean, Alex Nedeljkovic gave the Hurricanes every chance possible to win this game. He only allowed 2 goals. One of them was on the power play. The reality is Rod Brind'Amour never should have went with Peter Mrazek. That was a terrible decision. At the beginning of the playoffs, I got it wrong. Ned is by far and away the best goalie that the Hurricanes have. And he's going to be a good player in this league for a really long time. But going back to Vasilevsky for a minute, he did make one really great stop at the beginning of the Hakanpää penalty. Nikita Kucherov tried to wire the puck into the Hurricane zone. He just fanned on it. The Hurricanes had a 2-on-1 opportunity, and Vasilevsky made an absolutely incredible save. Sprawling save, desperation save on Vincent Trocheck. Go search it out if you haven't seen it. But then later in that power play, the Lightning capitalized. Braden Point got the puck in low. Made some excellent dekes. And made it 1-0 Lightning. And then the Colton goal was just the final nail in the coffin. Great individual effort, forced the Steven Lorentz turnover, and then sniped it past Ned. Right after that, you knew it was over. You knew the Hurricanes weren't going to come back. Look, this is a really good Lightning team. Make no mistake about it. They're going to be a tough team for the Islanders or Bruins to beat. They could repeat as Cup champs. That wouldn't surprise me at all. That's how great this team is playing right now. Moving on now to Golden Knights Avalanche. What an exciting game. Back and forth affair. Great moments. Really easy game to get into. I mean, you've got a 2-0 lead turning into a 3-2 win for the other team. As an impartial observer, it doesn't get much better than that. And that first Avalanche goal, 4/5 of a second left. Technically 8/10, but if you simplify it, 4/5. Oh, that was incredible. I just started laughing, seeing Fleury's response to it. He was ticked off. It was kind of funny. I mean, if you're a Golden Knights fan, you hate it. But again, if you're an Avalanche fan or an impartial observer, it's really funny. And I don't blame Fleury 1 second for getting upset, because that's a goal he should have stopped. That's a Yaroslav Halak goal. Yaroslav Halak, when he was an Islander, would give up goals like that. The second Avalanche goal, Fleury didn't have much of a chance on. The Golden Knights defense just lost Jonas Donskoy. It was a good pass from Newhook. I wouldn't blame Fleury for that. Then the Golden Knights decided to play for their goalie. What a novel concept. The Golden Knights did a great job on the forecheck, forcing the Andrei Burakovsky turnover. And an excellent goal by Alex Tuch. Great hand-eye coordination, sniping it past Grubauer. That was an impressive goal. And obviously there was plenty of time for one. And who else but Jonathan Marchessault? The guy who's killed the Avalanche all series. William Karlsson gets the Avalanche on an odd man rush. Nice pass to Marchessault. And the game is tied at 2. Overtime was really exciting, even though it was short. Marc-Andre Fleury made a great save on JT Compher. Then Mark Stone got loose behind the Avalanche defense and sniped it past Grubauer. So look, really impressive win for the Golden Knights. It's going to be very easy to get into Games 6 and 7 of this series, especially when the Islanders close out their series tonight. Yeah, I really think the Islanders are winning tonight. No Curtis Lazar, no Kevin Miller, no Brandon Carlo. Tuukka Rask is going to play, but he's not at 100%. I really think the Islanders are going to win tonight. If they lose tonight, Game 7 is in Boston on Friday, and the Islanders are going to have a tough time winning that. So I think the Islanders will be motivated. I think the stars are aligning in their favor. They just need to play sound defensive hockey. Don't let a 3-goal third-period lead become a 1-goal victory, and you'll be fine. As for the Bruins, this is going to sound really cliche, but you've got to cut out all the outside noise. You've got to just focus on your game. Everyone's going to be talking about the New York Saints, and I promise you, you're going to hear when the Saints come marching in at least once, and I'll be singing it. Shut out the noise. Keep the pressure up on Varlamov. Don't make Rask work too much. And don't take penalties because your penalty kill has been dreadful all series. If you do all that, you have a chance of winning. Not a great chance, but a chance. Yes, yes, yes. Until tomorrow, I am Jacob Valk saying that if Jean Valjean played baseball, his number would be 24601.